Our group presentation will be based on the Chief Justice Roger Brooke Taney, who was famously known for the Dred Scott decision in the Supreme Court case. Without further ado, this is the infamous decision. Roger B. Taney's ancestors were originally from England and migrated to the United States in 1660. His family settled in Maryland, where Taney was later born on March 17, 1777. Taney's family was of Catholic descent and owned a tobacco plantation which was operated by slaves. He was exposed to slavery since he was born, which led him to build a biased opinion on slavery. Taney's family encouraged him to attend college and study law, which Taney ended up doing as a career and graduated from Dickinson College in 1795. And later on married Yankee, who came from a pristine family. Yankee's brother wrote our national anthem, and Taney remained married and had 6 children with her throughout their marriage. Although Taney had graduated college in 1775, he did not begin his legal career until 1799. He worked in Maryland as a state legislator, was an attorney general of Maryland, and later on became one of the 5th Chief Justices of the United States, serving in the Supreme Court. In this image, you can see a picture of Taney and how he looks like while he was in office. In 1835, he began his career as Chief Justice, which eventually led to the famous Supreme Court case known as the Dred Scott decision, which held a very controversial topic, which we will go into further detail in other slides. On the left is a picture of Taney. On the right, there is an image of Dred Scott. In the middle, there is a printed article announcing the Supreme Court case. During this time, there was a lot of anticipations regarding the decision being made on whether or not African Americans would be considered citizens. Because if the decision was that they are citizens, then slavery would not be permitted. However, if the decision was made that African Americans were not citizens, slavery would be permitted throughout the states. The Dred Scott decision was given by Chief Justice Taney, which ruled in majority of African Americans not being citizens of any state, whether they were freed or not. Taney stated, of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race. The Dred Scott decision created a separation in our nation, which caused conflict within the states. Slavery was made legal, and Congress had no power to forbid or abolish slavery. In the image you can see that the United States map is being ripped in half by 4 male politicians. This is an accurate representation on how the country felt during this time, because the Dred Scott decision divided our nation with people who were pro and anti-slavery. The people who were pro-slavery was mostly in the South, and that is where the ruling was celebrated. However, this was an extremely devastating day for people who were enslaved, such as Dred Scott. Dred Scott was eventually bought again into slavery and became a slave until the end of the Civil War in 1861, when the 13th Amendment was passed, resulting in the end of slavery in all states. In this image, you can see 2 politicians stating different points of views for what their definition of peace is. The people for pro-slavery says, no peace without separation, while anti-slavery politician states no peace without abolition. While the person in the middle is attempting to pull the nation together to maintain a balance to preserve the union.
Roger B. Taney was the 5th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the United States. He was one of the dissenting judges in the Dred Scott decision, and in this cartoon it demonstrates a picture of him in a wanted poster in which he is wanted for judicial malfeasance. meaning that he was opposed to the Dred Scott decision, knowing on purpose that what he had chosen was wrong. Since he argued that as long as African Americans were living in the U.S., they didn't have any rights since they were not U.S. citizens, just slaves, in which he states in the poster they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. In other words, how could whites respect African Americans' rights if they didn't have any, according to him? And this cartoon demonstrates leading Democratic leaders of the time in which two of them are trying to pull the free soiler's head in order to make the slave fit in his mouth, and the other two Democratic politicians are on the left trying to shove the slave into the free soiler's mouth while he screams for help, saying, "Murder! Help! Neighbors, help! Oh, my poor wife and children." The description is exactly what is happening in the cartoon, which is Democratic leaders are forcing slavery down the throat of the free soiler. They were doing this in order to try and convince the public that the expansion of slavery was necessary, since at the time there was starting to be two sides in the U.S., and the other side wanted to free slaves, in which it ended up being the Civil War. After quite some time, Roger B. Taney's statue was successfully removed from the U.S. Capitol. Since this was very controversial because he was a very important historical figure, it was also worth noting that what he had previously done in terms of the Dred Scott decision, denying Black American citizenship rights and him being for slavery.
Taney's decision, especially the notorious Dred Scott versus Stanford case, highlighted the lack of legal protections and recognition for African Americans. Reform in civil rights laws, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or the Voting Rights Act of 1965, were a response aimed at ensuring quality and protection for people of all races. Countering the effects of the decision like these made by Taney. The most successful advocacy group thus far has been the Rename Taney Coalition. They have been pursuing for the street name change since 2020, and they propose the street to be called LeCount Street to honor the late Philippine civil rights activist Caroline LeCount. 94% of Taney Street residents surveyed are in favor of removing and renaming the street. This comes to demonstrate, furthermore, how he continues to be a very controversial figure in our history.
The destruction of the Roger Brooke Taney Monument happened in front of the Frederick City Hall. The bronze bust was found by a bystander in October of 2015 at 8:18 a.m. It was covered in bright red paint. The vandalism forced the mayor and councilors to determine whether or not to keep the monument in front of the city hall, after it became the topic of a political discussion in the community about the reoccurrence. When referring to the unfair decisions that the men in authority made in the past, our country's biased beliefs are progressing and there has been a great deal of improvement. The picture shows Charlie Taney, a descendant of Roger Taney, making an apology to the public on behalf of his relative, proving that Roger Taney's choice was harsh and unequal. It is a reflection of a large social dialogue about addressing the injustice African Americans have endured throughout history and the legacy of slavery.
Many people are opposed to having statues or monuments of people who have made racist remarks when they were alive. Protests have been formed to remove these people from their states because they feel as if they are supporting the racist decisions that they had made in the past when they were in position of power. After vandalism, protests, and controversy regarding Taney's statue in the state of Maryland, on a unanimous vote, the statue was removed from Maryland State House grounds. The picture was taken at night, which is when the statue was removed from where it has been first placed since December 10th, 1872. Roger Brooke Taney died on October 12, 1864, and was placed to rest in the St. John Cemetery in Frederick, Maryland. This is his headstone in that cemetery. When he passed away, he left behind 6 children who he conceived with his wife, Anne Key, who passed away years before his death. Taney's decision for the Dred Scott Supreme Court case left a mark in history of the United States, and he continues to be a topic of discussion due to the topic of race, civil rights, and his contribution to the American Civil War in 1861. Thank you all for listening to our presentation. We really enjoyed creating this all for you. If you would like to learn more about Justice Taney, you may do so by looking at the last 2 slides of our presentation, which include all of the works cited pages and websites, as well as some of the articles and videos that we have looked at to make this presentation happen.